why people are living longer. I think it's really hard to test everything for prevention, obviously, but there's some preventive tests that are really easy and really well understood and really common and not very expensive. For example, vitamin D. When I do a blood chemistry, I always add a vitamin D level, 25-hydroxy. Vitamin D, for many years, was really denigrated by the FDA and the DEA, not the DEA, by the CDC in Atlanta and the Department of Agriculture. So they said, we got too much vitamin D. 400 units of vitamin D will calcify your kidney and your brain, and it'll kill you. And they said that about 35 years ago. And people were afraid to take vitamin D. I looked into the study at that time, and I braved the authorities and put 800 units of vitamin D in my multiple vitamin. I gave people 800 units of vitamin D3. Like so many other things, vitamin D is not just vitamin D. There's vitamin D2, which is toxic and not very effective, and vitamin D3, which is highly effective and very low to zero toxicity. So, so I gave vitamin D3 40 years ago. And a friend of mine started a vitamin line, and she was afraid of the vitamin D, so she didn't put any vitamin D in her vitamin line. And for about 30 years, she took her vitamins without any vitamin D at all. And she died of pancreatic cancer. Vitamin D, when it's low, supposedly increases, it's too soon to be sure if this is totally true, but I think it is. Vitamin D, when it's below the ideal amount, can increase your risk of cancer by 55%. And there's some pretty good studies to reflect that statistic. So one thing you can do is measure your vitamin D. You can measure your iodine. If you don't have enough iodine, your thyroid's not going to work. And so I always measure iodine. You can measure your blood sugar. So you can measure your you can measure your cysteine, your homocysteine. Homocysteine has nothing to do with homosexuality. It's a breakdown product of the essential amino acid cysteine, and if you're high in homocysteine, then you have again increased risk of damage to your arteries, and possibly increased risk of cancer. So you can take a certain nutrient program, which includes at least B6, B12, and folic acid, and you take that, and your homocysteine level will diminish below a certain point. And so that's another preventive medicine you can do. So there's a number of things like I mentioned the obvious ones, but chelation and also there are studies that show that taking a certain amount of vitamin C, like taking several thousand milligrams of vitamin C a day. We're going to be all right up there? Yeah. So taking several thousand milligrams of vitamin C a day decreases your risk of heart disease, decreases your risk of cancer. Same thing is true of vitamin E. There are studies that show that. Now, these were studies that were done at UCLA 10, 15 years ago. And now they're coming out with studies, and I don't know who pays for these studies, I don't know who does these studies, but the studies that show if you take vitamin E, it's going to kill you. If you take vitamin C, it's going to kill you. I would tell you that the only way vitamin E can kill you is if you drown in it.